I had reconstructive surgery on both shoulders and both hips. 2 years off the sport I love most, I had to teach myself to walk again. I was literally pissing into a bottle. And people I cared about told me to quit. Just accept it, lower the bar. This is my life now, right? I just got to give up my athletic ability. And no, I came back and I'm here and I'm strong and I'm training. And what I found out in recovery and that pain is that in not knowing if I ever would come back was probably the most honest version of myself that I'd ever met, which made me wonder, why did it take all of that to get there? Most people go their whole lives emotionally disconnected from themselves. And I don't mean in some deep traumatic way. I just mean in a way that comfort makes it really easy to never have to find out who you actually are. And you never get forced into that moment, so you never have to show up for it. And here's the thing, we're living in the most unique window in human history for this. More identities are accepted now more than ever, and more ways of living, more cultural spaces are genuinely different and acceptable. So now we have permission to build something that looks like nothing that came before it and nothing that your parents did. And so this opportunity to find yourself has never been more available. But the issue is that most people still won't do it. Finding yourself means going somewhere uncomfortable, somewhere that has a degree of uncertainty and somewhere that, you might show you something that you didn't expect about yourself. And so we've built this world that is so, perfectly optimized for comfort that most people never voluntarily go there. We experience safety on social media, in the food that we eat, in the routine that we have. There isn't an opportunity to really break open our characters. And that means we'll die without ever meeting ourselves. Not tragically, just a quiet, very boring death. Heidegger talks about this. So Heidegger calls this fallenness. That's the idea that most people don't actually live their own lives. They live what he called the they self. So that's the version of yourself assembled from social expectations and other people's opinions. So whatever everyone around you seems to be doing is influencing that idea of self. And his point with this was that it isn't a character flaw in people. It's our default state of operating. And that's what happens automatically if you never choose otherwise. And so even if you feel comfortable with your current circumstances, we are all cast into the system of following what the next person and what society has already built for us. And authenticity in this framework didn't have to do with a personality trait. It required an active decision, a repeated decision to confront who you actually are rather than just performing a version of yourself that's easiest to maintain. And most people never make that decision, and it's not because they can't, it's because nobody told them that it was a decision that they could make in the first place. And when you're lying in recovery and someone you love tells you to just accept it, there's this moment where you either fold or you find out what is actually in there. And I found out that I don't quit. And that's not because I had some spiritual revelation or I changed a bunch of things in my life. It was just because I genuinely couldn't accept the version of my life where I wasn't able to do what I wanted. And in grinding and coming back when the odds were against me, in doing the thing that most people who cared about me said was unrealistic, I met something in myself that I didn't know that was there. I had to develop it. So yeah, there were these elements inside of me that I brought out by going through struggle. And that's what adversity does that comfort is unable to replicate. It's not just about building character, it's revealing it. And it's stripping away everything that we've been performing and leaves something underneath. And sometimes that's much better than what you thought. Sometimes it's uglier, but at least it's real. And that is what allows you to truly get to know yourself. And modern life is specifically designed to keep us away from these moments and to keep us comfortable enough that we never have to find out who we actually are. And that's complete bullshit. And the work the work culture that we have that makes it so much worse, because most people spend their time doing these office jobs and these roles and answering to someone who doesn't even know their name. And these jobs are inherently degrading. You sit in a meeting with nothing to do with who you are. You flip the page, you post on LinkedIn, you talk to your buddies in the office, but they don't care about each other. You're having a boss that treats you like a number, and to survive, you have to disconnect from that role and yourself, because it sucks. And in the disconnecting, you're spending so much time that disconnection bleeds into everything. You spend 40 hours a week being nobody, and eventually you stop being somebody particular on the weekends as well. And you forget what you actually think and what you do if nobody was watching. And that's horrible, because it creates these robots, and society, in this modern work culture wants us to be robots, because then we are more productive. But in doing so, we slowly separate our inner character from the work in front of us and never really get to meet it. And that's how people end up at 65 never having met themselves. It's not from one big failure. It's just through 1,000 small disconnected accumulations over our lifetime. And there's hope in this. And the part that I find the most hopeful is that our generation has something that no generation before has had, which is actual permission. Real cultural permission to be something other than what was expected. To pursue things that don't make conventional sense, and to build a life that looks nothing like our parents. And some people may say this is bad because we have a lot of dreamers. And naturally, as the economic state of the world has deteriorated, people look up to the ones that are successful and idolize them. But on the other hand, there's still a lot of positive to this, because despite having celebrity culture, the fact that we can have people famous for their personality or their works of art or their music or their inventions goes to show that we have the potential to rise above the slop. And that is encouraged. And in fact, it is something that will often make you successful in the society, because we are too frequently competing for the same resources. And doing something unique is really your only option to break out of it. And the door, in this metaphorical sense, is never been more open than before. The question is whether or not we're brave enough to walk through and to put up with all these barriers that the people at the top have put for us in ascending into our more successful life. And that door being open doesn't mean anything if we just stand there and are content with removing ourselves from our inner character. And so meeting yourself requires going somewhere that puts strain on your character. The surgery did that for me without my asking. And I'm thankful for it, because most people never get forced into that moment, which means that most people have to choose it themselves. And most won't. They'll stay comfortable, they'll maintain their performance, they'll live the life that got handed to them and call it their own. We have various classes of people, and those that are raised in poverty and in economic struggle at least know to fight for something better. But the people who are often in this middle ground have enough comfort that they forget that life can be so much more than what they have. And as a result, they often amount to nothing. And I believe that's why you see a lot of talent come out of hard situations, because to even get past these roadblocks of their day-to-day life, they had to become exceptional. And you have that opportunity too, even if you are okay and could maintain this current state for the rest of your life. And there's no reason to die without actually ever knowing what's in there. And whatever that thing is, and even if it scares you, it's better to know it and to know how it ends and to go do it, rather than being comforted in safety. And that's not because it'll work out. There's no guarantees. But at least in trying to do something different, you'll find out who you are when it doesn't work. And that's worth more than a lifetime of comfort could ever deliver to you. So go out and live and fail and find out who you really are. Because most people die without ever meeting themselves.